The Taylor family boarded the SS Manhattan and headed to America, fleeing war before it was cool. Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos involves arts and entertainment. Growing up in England, films were a primary mechanism by which I learned all about America. So, Home Alone taught me that Americans all live in lavish houses. Jaws taught me that Martha's Vineyard is rife with anti-shark discrimination. And Forrest Gump taught me that shrimping ain't easy. In other words, movies demand that we suspend our disbelief, that we eschew logic for escapism and pretend for 2 hours that this is the enemy. And of course, given the nature of pretense, the same is also true of actors. In House, Hugh Laurie makes you believe that he's a grouchy doctor with a dry American accent. In Bridget Jones, Renée Zellweger convinces you she's a down-on-her-luck 30-something from southern England. And sometimes, ever so occasionally, there's a gargantuan plot twist. An actor will portray someone of their own nationality while the general public forgets that he or she was in fact born elsewhere. It's a niche group, but somebody's got to do it, like, for instance, the people on today's list. You see, the names and faces that you're about to meet were all citizens of the United States, or Canada, were all stars of the big screens, and all shared one hereditary distinction. They were all born in England. So, without further ado, put your phones on vibrate and your babies on silent as I unveil 6 North American actors that were born on the other side of the pond, the first of whom should not be referred to in the past tense because she'll probably outlive all of us. Okay, I'll admit it, this one is the least surprising of all of the entries on this list, partly because Angela Lansbury's full title is Dame Angela Bridget Lansbury, and mostly because I've seen her in Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. But when she wasn't busy polishing knobs, I'm so sorry, Dame Angela. She was busy solving murders, or influencing them, or who knows, malevolently orchestrating them. Basically, she was Jessica Fletcher in the hit US TV show Murder, She Wrote. And if you're watching this and thinking, wait, Jessica Fletcher wasn't American, don't worry, she is. Although born in Regent's Park in London, presumably in a hospital and not, in a hedge, 15-year-old Angela Lansbury fled Nazi bombardment during the Blitz, emigrating with her family to New York City in 1940. There she graduated from the Fegan School of Dramatic Art and 2 years later picked up an Academy Award nomination for her role in Gaslight alongside Ingrid Bergman. In 1951, she became a naturalized citizen of the United States, adding both to her British and Irish citizenship, a result of her mother having been born in Ireland. Rumour has it that Dame Angela, now 94, aims to secure passports to all nations before her 154th birthday. Perhaps she might get a little help from our next entrant. When he wasn't bullying Wesley Crusher in Stand By Me or convincing medical students to die for science in Flatliners, Kiefer Sutherland was best known for his portrayal of Californian counter-terrorist agent Jack Bauer in the hit TV series 24. But it turns out that Sutherland and Bauer are not so similar off-screen, except for the headbutting. You see, Kiefer William Frederick Dempsey George Rufus Sutherland was born to famous Canadian parents, Shirley Jean Douglas and Donald McNichol Sutherland. Why does Kiefer get 7 names? Anyway, secondly, he was born to those parents in Paddington, London, while they were living and working there. No word on whether he got the chance to meet and punch a certain Peruvian bear. But what is known is that baby Kiefer was whisked away to California soon after. So probably. Anyhow, speaking of faded 80s film stars who later saw career revivals on television and who just happened to be Canadian, cue up our next entry. While many of you might think of Kim Cattrall as Samantha in Sex and the City, for me she will always be Gracie Law in Big Trouble in Little China. In fact, Cattrall starred in a string of other American cult classics during the 80s, including Mannequin, Porky's, and a film criminally overlooked at the 1985 Oscars, Police Academy. But in line with her cinematic pretense, Cattrall was neither born in the United States nor is she an American citizen. In fact, in a sentence I didn't ever expect to utter, Kim Cattrall has a surprising amount in common with Kiefer Sutherland. Both are Canadians, both got their start in the 80s, and both were born in England. Cattrall was born in 1956 in Liverpool, a city that would enter pop culture folklore just a few years later with the emergence of one of the most influential rock groups, Jerry and the Pacemakers, but a young Cattrall didn't stick around long enough for any of that. She moved with her family to British Columbia when she was just 3 months old, returning only sporadically to her birthplace years later. Anyway, from golden-haired scousers to the golden age of Hollywood, half a century earlier, 175 miles south, our next entrant was born. Have you ever wondered why some actors perform under a stage name? Just ask Archibald Alec Leach, otherwise known as screen legend Cary Grant. Born in Bristol, England in 1904, Grant in fact spent the first 16 years of his life in that very city. However, dissatisfied with his troubled home life, he boarded the RMS Olympic in 1920, bound for the United States of America. Once he arrived, he and his performance troupe played a successful 9-month production at the New York Hippodrome. After the rest of the troupe moved back to Britain, Grant stayed on in the US longer than originally intended, which is the second thing he and I have in common. The first being our intense good looks and smooth charm. Throughout the 1920s, his stage and performance career evolved, as did his accent. The English variety with which he had grown up made way for a mid-Atlantic accent that would become the standard way of speaking in the golden era of US cinema. And by the 1930s, Cary Grant, the film star, was born. He would go on to be nominated for 2 Academy Awards in a film career spanning more than 30 years, with his final film being 1966's Walk, Don't Run. Fittingly, one of his co-stars in that film was herself an English-American actor, Samantha Eggar, or, to give her full name, Victoria Louise Samantha Marie Elizabeth Therese Eggar. It's as if 2 passports isn't enough for these people. Anyway, it gets better. Grant famously collaborated with director Alfred Hitchcock, yet another dual British-American citizen, and technically an actor, so, bonus entry. But meanwhile, their trifecta with MGM star Grace Kelly calls to mind another actress with those same 2 passports. That's right, while Kelly may have shared the screen with Grant in To Catch a Thief, one of MGM's other leading ladies shared something else: the country of his birth. Due to the fact that her parents were US citizens from Kansas, screen legend Elizabeth Taylor was American from the very moment she entered the world. However, owing to the fact that her birth took place in London, she also accidentally turned out British. We've all done it. But then again, perhaps this wasn't such an accident after all. You see, for the prior 3 years, her parents had already lived in Hampstead Garden suburb, just 6 miles from where Kiefer Sutherland would eventually pop out. They remained there until 1939, and we all know what happened then, don't we? As the threat of war loomed across Europe like an oversized badger, the Taylor family boarded the SS Manhattan and headed to America, fleeing war before it was cool. They moved in with Elizabeth's grandfather in Pasadena, which, wasn't the worst destination for an aspiring actress. After landing a series of small roles, her big break came in 1944 when 12-year-old Taylor secured her first starring role. She was cast in a film called National Velvet alongside Mickey Rooney, Donald Crisp, and, proving that the universe is absolutely bonkers, Angela Lansbury. Indeed, the two would strike up a close friendship that would last until Taylor's death in 2011, and like Lansbury, she was made a dame by her royal namesake. Presumably riddled with imposter syndrome due to only having the Regulation 3 names, Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor decided that 8 marriages ought to make up for it. Of course, she also won more Academy Awards than your average human, so the trend of dual citizens always wanting more continues. And our final entry ought to know, he lived to the ripe old age of 100. In fact, Bob Leslie Towns Hope did a lot of everything. His Wikipedia page lists him as a stand-up comedian, vaudevillian, actor, singer, dancer, athlete, author, and centenarian. He also has the distinction of having hosted more Oscar ceremonies than anybody else in history, and in a monumental twist of fate, did so for the nominations of Elizabeth Taylor, Angela Lansbury, and Cary Grant. Sutherland and Cattrall are calling their agents as we speak. But for many, Bob Hope will be best remembered for entertaining US troops. Indeed, his work with the USO is the stuff of legends, and in 1997, the US Congress declared him the first and only honorary veteran of the US Armed Forces. And yet, Bob Hope's birthplace was just 16 miles from that of Elizabeth Taylor. Born in the London district of Eltham in 1903, Hope was one of 7 brothers raised in a working-class family that relocated to the United States when Hope was just 4. He and his family sailed on the SS Philadelphia, ironically a British-built ship, and entered Ellis Island in March 1908. His career spanned almost 80 years with multiple appearances in film, the pop charts and comedy clubs. In addition to his honorary veteran status, Hope was also presented with numerous honorary Academy Awards and even an honorary knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II. Try saying the word honorary 500 times after a glass of wine. I just did. Ultimately, he died in Los Angeles in 2003, 5,500 miles from where it all began, Eltham, London. That's it for this episode. Were there any that I missed? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to ensure that my videos don't get lost in the pond. A big shout out to all my patrons who make this channel possible. Without you, none of it would be, from the writing, the research, the technical equipment, and the 5 new middle names. If you would like to become a patron of this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. All patrons will have access to my secret live stream, and those pledging $5 or more a month will get that, plus my secret podcast, and more. Until next time, be sure to stay until the end of the credits and have yourself a most brilliant day. Goodbye. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.